if I told you that the stalking that you claim and possibly have reported that you experience, what would you start thinking? Would you try to pull out all the variety of text messages and emails and social media direct messages that you have gotten to prove to me that you have been stalked? Would you talk to specific departments such as FBI, right? The police who monitor cyber stalking and cyberbullying. Would you talk to the Attorney General? How would you go about it? There's a lot of people who are afraid that when they bring up the word stalking, there's going to be this rejection, this attitude that, no, you're not going through this like you think. You're not dealing with this like you think you are. Go home and wait until something happens. Call us back when the stalker contacts you. Those are the kind of things that most people are afraid are going to be told to them. And quite frankly, I don't necessarily blame you, because that really is what's going to be told to you. I think we all have this idea of law enforcement that in a sense they are gods and they can track down anything, they can find anything, they can protect us from everything, and they're going to believe me just because I pick up the phone and I dial 911, or because I walk into a police station and I have all this proof that I'm being stalked. The reality here is stalking is a very tricky classification, and it's really hard for law enforcement to track down any kind of quote unquote stalking without having a trail, a trace, a person, something, fingerprints, bodily fluids, blood, saliva, right? Without those things, there is nothing that the police can do. And I think a lot of people fail to realize that. So when someone mentions something like, I'm being stalked by my ex, or I'm being stalked by a distant family member, law enforcement or police, they look at you sideways, right? Because they don't know if they should trust you or not. And there's really no theoretical basis for stalking quite. In a sense, stalking research is kind of what we would call atheoretical, meaning that there is no theoretical basis of stalking. We really are lacking information, data, research, statistics on what actually happens and what's their pattern of behavior. In 1990, Paul Mullen studied and identified different kinds of stalkers. And we're going to talk about them a little bit later, but these different kind of stalkers, they tend to have very little in common, and it can be really difficult to identify these different stalkers without a knowledge base of psychology and human behavior, obsessive behaviors and mental illness, criminal minds and criminal thinking. You have to have that foundation in order to understand the stalking classification. We really try our best as professionals to define the typologies, of each stalker, and it's really hard to do that. But when you go to law enforcement, and even if you go to a psychotherapist, they're going to want some actual proof of what's happening to you. Now, let me say that stalking is defined differently depending on, where you are and the culture in the area, and the zeitgeist, if you will. But what I have now is a research definition, which is that stalking is a repeated pattern of unwanted intrusive behaviors, and it is imposed on another person. It evokes fear, anxiety, distress, and it keeps you feeling like you are vulnerable and at your wit's end. It's really a constellation of behaviors, and the constellation of behaviors are persistent and fatiguing. Persistent and fatiguing. You're likely to experience verbal, psychological, and emotional abuse and harassment and threats. It's likely that this stalking offense or the series of stalking events that you're experiencing, it's possible that the person is an obsessional follower, and they harass because they are in an obsessive, ruminative mind frame, and it's hard for them to move to the next thing because they're stuck there. Stalking really is described as a phenomenon. We lack a lot. That is why anytime the conversation entails stalking, it's really an expert opinion. It's really guesswork, and it's identifying traits and patterns of behavior over time. And that is why sometimes if you go to the police or a therapist and you say, I'm being stalked, the first question is most likely going to be by who, and the second question is most likely to be in what way. And if you describe 1 or 2 incidents, right, or 3 or 4 incidents, and it hasn't continued over a consistent period of time, then that can easily be chalked up to, well, that happened there and there and there, but that doesn't mean it's going to continue. Maybe they're trying to get the relationship back. Maybe they're trying to talk to you. Maybe they just wanted to scare you a little bit. Maybe they're resentful and want you back. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be said. And so that leaves the door open for doubt. That leaves the door open for people to question you a little bit further. And if you don't have those answers, and if you don't have concrete answers that don't make any real sense, you're not going to get anywhere. That's what makes this complicated. Even myself as a therapist, if somebody comes to me and says, I'm being stalked, then I need to know by whom, when did it start, what's their method of stalking you. And then I try to engage you in looking for holes in your belief system and really identifying what sense these events have made to you that seem to be of a stalking nature. Because what we truly need, especially before we go to law enforcement, is a concrete, consistent pattern of behavior that makes some clear sense as to why it's happening. And we need to be able to identify one person, and we're not talking about guesswork. That might be him over there. That may be my cousin. We're not looking for that. Let me throw gang stalking in here for a second. This is a topic that a lot of people cringe over when they hear it. Why? Because gang stalking, number one, the term in and of itself sounds like a joke, right? So you go to a police officer and you say, I'm being gang stalked. What do you think they're going to say to you? They're not going to say, okay, come in my back office and sit down, let's talk about it. They need to know who's doing it, why you're so important that they're doing it, how long has this been happening, and has anybody else come to them with the same kind of complaint? And if all results turn up to be a no, or it's impossible to find out, or it's not something that is easy to identify and rectify, then you're going to be passed off as mentally unstable, delusional and paranoid, confused and highly influenced by culture, manipulated in your mind and in your heart by a theory that could be brushed off as a conspiracy theory, right? Or you're going to be seen as somebody who needs their medication. And I've done this topic before on the channel. I've done topics on gang stalking on this channel, and I've given you 2 different views of it. And those videos have been very, very popular because this is a common theory. In the field of psychology and in law, it is a psychosis. It is a conspiracy theory. It is a political movement. It's something that people have come together on. It is something that people believe is happening to them when they can't make sense out of anything else. It's something that a lot of people have decided is happening to them. And it often tends to happen right after or soon after a traumatic event they've experienced, a loss of something they've experienced, years of untreated mental illness, stress and anxiety, a depressive episode or series of episodes, a bipolar manic episode. We do have some research, and some of the research focuses on those different areas, right? When did this theory of stalking, pop up? Did it pop up after this? Did it pop up during this? Does it make sense that this is happening to them now? Does it make sense that they are so important that they're being gang stalked? There's nothing in the mind of a police officer, an FBI agent, that could make them believe that this is a such thing. There is nothing. And there's nothing out there either. Because the number one question they're going to have is this: what makes you so important that large corporations and a variety of other things and people and places would bother to stalk you? And so when an officer and when a therapist gets to that conclusion, and there is no logical way to explain this, and the thinking is abstract and nebulous and cloudy and unsupported, then we drop it. Let me highlight this. We're going to separate gang stalking from this particular topic, because gang stalking is a phenomenon that's way over there. This kind of stalking, though, isn't. And it tends to be something that professionals continue to study because it's provable. We can see it. We can hear it. Sometimes we can even get up on it and we can see it up close and personal. We can arrest the victim. We can control things to get the victim to confess. We can sometimes do therapy with the victim of stalking or the victimizer. Let's jump in. If you want to learn more about these stalker types and common behaviors and what research has found, and if you also want to know what you can do to help support yourself or somebody that you know, then you definitely want to keep on watching. I'm not going to go over my professional story again. What I will do is post it right here. These two videos, I do talk about my experience as a victim of stalking, that I was stalked professionally for almost a year. It was about 6 months. The person ended up 302'd by myself, and they went to the hospital, got treatment, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and came back out and tried to stalk me again because she was arrested and had a warrant and some other legal issues. I remember feeling this sense of, I'm alone, I'm scared, I don't know if I should even say I'm scared, because then my supervisor at the time may not understand and the police may not understand, and quite frankly, I'm a therapist. I kind of put myself in this position. So my mind went through a lot, and thank God I had my mom there to support me, and a wonderful, wonderful mentor who has been my clinical support for so many years. I don't know how I was able to maneuver myself out of that psychologically, but eventually there was an end to it, and I was able to move on. It is a scary thing when you are stalked, right? Because it's a sense of loss of power. It's a feeling of being hurt, harmed, and not having the tools and the expertise to manage the situation. Often what we do is, because we're not used to this kind of behavior, we run to law enforcement or we run to a therapist and we try to get their input and their understanding and their guidance. And sometimes that is possible. Other times it isn't. And you really have to be choosy and picky. Is this the kind of therapist that's going to understand me? Is this the kind of police officer that's going to understand me? Because we do have some idea now. It's a better idea than what we had when California became the first state to pass the law. I think it was 1990 when they decided to pass a law to make stalking a crime. So we have gathered some information from that point on, but we still lack a lot of research. And if you were to, deal with the situation personally, professionally, you're likely to see the individual being very physically confrontational. They have this kind of energy that says, yes, I'm stalking you, and I'm stalking you because I want something from you, and you're going to give it to me, and I'm forcing you to do that because I am obsessive, I ruminate, I want what I want, I'm gonna get my way, or I'm a predator. I recently talked about a predator right up here, so check that out at the end of this video. But this is kind of the mentality. So they are physically confrontational. They are intrusive and have absolutely no boundaries. They don't care about boundaries. You know, if you say to them, I am not interested in you, after months and months of telling them I'm not available to date, that is a problem, right? They are intrusive. They have no boundaries. And their intrusiveness is what makes them appalling. They also have a lot of disordered behavior and antisocial behavior. So a sociopath, a psychopath sometimes. You may also get a narcissist in there and feels like he or she should have what they want, so you're going to deal with the stalking. Disordered behavior, meaning they could have schizophrenia. I talk about that right up here in this video I did years ago on psychotic stalking. They may have a personality disorder, right? Borderline personality, antisocial personality disorder. They could have a bipolar disorder, which is a mood disorder, right? They could have disordered behavior, which is kind of pushing this, you know, stalking behavior. There's low self-esteem. And there's little to no social skills as well. You know, there's a lot of sneakiness. So they may contact your entourage or your family or your boss or your friends when you don't know. So behind your back, they're contacting people close to you. They may be doing things like leaving things on your property, putting things on your vehicle, somehow gaining entry to your vehicle, sitting in your car and leaving you notes, right? That is so creepy. They may also track you with a GPS or have access to many of your accounts. You know, maybe you let them get some money out of your bank, so they still have that account number. Their course of conduct is very unpredictable. It's hard to predict what their next move is going to be. It is also hard to predict what started this behavior. You know, if it's a romance or some kind of emotional relationship, it's possible that maybe it started at a breakup, or maybe it started after an argument, or maybe it started after an affair. Now, Paul Mullen, in the 1990s, he came up with stalker types. We call them typologies, you know, we call them personality profiles, but it all means the same thing. So let's start with the first thing that he came up with. He identified the predatory stalker, and we all know what that is, right? It's a predator. He seeks to devour you, to harm you, to manipulate you, to embarrass and humiliate you. Whatever they can do, they will do. They don't want a relationship with you. They want power and control. They love the feeling that they get when they stalk you. You know, they are typically controlling and dominating. And if they were in a relationship with you, this is typically the last kind of behavior that is triggered in a broken up relationship. You know, like sometimes there's a series of behaviors that happens in a relationship that's headed towards the end. And for stalkers, stalking typically is the last resort kind of behavior, you know, and they tend to do this when there is no more contact with you, or you've slammed the door, you've said absolutely not, I want nothing to do with you, because they tend to do this to you, to frighten you, to put fear in you, to make you apprehensive, to take your peace of mind, you know, and to get you all riled up and off kilter. There's also the incompetent stalker, and you really want to think of this person as having an inability to be socially connected. You know, they are very socially inept. They don't have what it takes to be social. They tend to be lonely, loners. They're often ignored in society. And, you know, they just kind of fall prey to their mind and what they want and desire. And so that's what kind of triggers that inappropriate behavior. They're incompetent in the sense that they don't know what to do and they don't have skills. They just know that they want a relationship because they desire something with you. But it isn't anything that's going to ever be reciprocated. They are socially awkward. I'll put it that way. They're socially awkward, and you may even mistaken them for being on the autism spectrum. The resentful stalker could be somebody who clearly knows that the relationship is over or it'll never be. It's something that can never come about. And they kind of have this anger, this resentment that is riding under the surface of a lot of their behaviors. And what they do is stalk you and harass you. And they do all of these ugly, disgusting behaviors to seek revenge because they are resentful. They know that they are never going to get a chance with you, or they're never going to be invited into your space again. And revenge may be something like breaking into your social media account and posting messages that are inappropriate, going to a family member of yours and having a conversation about you behind your back. Now, the rejected stalker is kind of the same way. It's the attitude of, how dare you reject me? After I've done all of this, and after I've been in a relationship with you, and after I asked you for a relationship, how dare you say no? These individuals are obsessive, and their advances are unwanted. Their presence in your life is unwanted. Know that if they are in a relationship with you, they know that the relationship is coming to an end, and it's an unwanted end. And they don't know how else to salvage the relationship. They don't know how else to manage the failing part of the relationship. We also have cyber stalking. And cyber stalking is really using technology to be intrusive. Emails, text messages, social media, direct messages, right? Social media posts, the list goes on. I once had a client who stole his wife's, who was a high-powered attorney in the area, stole his wife's social media account passwords because she did something that wasn't very wise, which was use the same password on multiple devices. And so he gained access to her laptop, her telephone, her work computer, her Instagram, and her what used to be Twitter account. Posted messages under her name and under her profile that were very not untypical, if I can use that word. It was not typical for her. Took it amongst himself to break into her life and control it. The other thing is an intimacy stalker. Intimacy stalkers, they're often a stranger, but they can be acquaintances or people that have been in your life at some point. Let me add that they really do look at you as somebody that is powerful. Sometimes they're admirers of you for whatever reason. Maybe you're attractive, maybe you're smart, maybe you're rich, maybe you're a business partner of some sort. But they look at you from a place of admiration, and they want to be a part of that. They want you to like them because they have this delusional edge to them, and they believe that what their heart loves and cares for and is interested in, and their mind, that it is for them, and it better be reciprocated. So what do you do if this is you? Well, this is what's interesting. We lack a lot of treatment approaches to stalking, and we really need a specific approach to healing victims of stalkers because we are far behind. There is a treatment protocol that is known as the Treatment Improvement Protocol. And it's a trauma-informed ideology that ensures that mental health providers, medical providers, all medical personnel, if you will, have some kind of knowledge of the victimization of stalking and the traumatic impact that it can have on somebody else's life. So there is an evidence-based way to manage victims of stalkers, but we truly need some broader treatment tools and some more readily available treatment tools to help victims of stalking. There's also really making sure that you are tuned in to knowledge. So like you're watching this video right now, you want to watch as many videos as you can. You want to look at many articles, get some books, go to the library, pull up some research articles, learn all you can about stalking, because if professionals such as myself with 16 years of being a therapist and providing education and conferences, if we can somehow in some odd way miss some different pieces of what stalking is all about and need to refresh our memory, you most definitely need to learn more. So continue to learn. You also want to gather and maintain true proof. There are a lot of people who say, I have this tape that shows 5 cars driving past my home. And even though they're different color cars, they have the same license plate, or they have the same number in the series of numbers on the license plate. That is not going to cut it. Some people say things like, well, he called me 5 different times and then hung up. Okay, but if he's calling you 26 different times, 40 different times, 100 different times in 1 month, etc., then that is something that we need, right? If they're posting constantly on your social media page and every day for multiple times a day, they're attacking you, that is essential information. That is true proof. If there's a face, a body, and that person engaging in the act that is available, you want that. Anything that is nebulous, anything that is abstract, anything that could mean something else will not cut it. And I think that's where a lot of people fail to realize. And if there's no person or group of people that can be concretely proven to be stalking you, then it isn't happening. Be more strategic in what you share. Don't share everything on social media. Everybody doesn't need to know that you went to Virginia Beach. You can post a picture and say, this was my last vacation. That's it. Nobody needs to know you've been to Virginia Beach. Nobody needs to know that you flew to Bogota, Colombia. Turn off your GPS tracker on your phone. On social media, nobody needs to know where you are at this moment. Watch the GPS trackers on other apps on your phone as well. Try to download something like Norton antivirus that can help track you and that can help track other people who may be trying to harm you. LifeLock, that's a wonderful thing to have if you're worried about your credit. Check your bank accounts at least once or twice a month. Make sure that you are not being charged for things that are not under your name, that your cards are not being used against your will. The other thing is strongly consider an attorney. If you feel that you have proof and it makes some clear logical sense, then go to an attorney and ask for a free consultation. Ask for some advice from the attorney and ask them to possibly step in if this doesn't stop and you need them, right? Know the law, know the knowledge of the law in your area. Every jurisdiction and legislation is different. So know what that law is in your area. There are websites that you can go to. Stalker victim awareness groups are often around. Look for those. Get into a support group. These are concrete things that you can do to mitigate the damages of stalking. Come see me Friday and Saturday of this week. I'm going to talk about this live, and I have a feeling you're going to want to see it. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.